Welcome to the DVD, Smart Kids Who Hate to Write, Kids Who Have Dysgraphia or Visual Spatial Problems. I'm Dianne Kraft. We're going to talk about your puzzling kids today. The kids that you say, oh, they know so much, but they can't write anything down. Your kids that have a harder time maybe tying their shoes, the visual spatial part. We're going to look at everything that is involved with head-to-hand processing in kids. Let's think about processes. When you drove today, when you drove your car, you didn't have to give thought to how to turn, which direction to turn the signals, how to put the car into deceleration as you're going around the curve. You didn't have to think about all the processes of driving because, why not? The processes of driving had transferred to your automatic hemisphere. What if you had to think about every process of driving just like when you first learned, and you had to think about the signals, that think about slowing down around the curve, think about how to use the brakes and accelerator, then driving would be a chore. Well, we're going to liken that analogy to what it's like when a child has to write or do anything visual, motor, or eye-hand if he has a glitch or a block in that area. Dr. Mel Levine calls them energy leaks. So we're going to talk about these wonderful kids in this hour, and then we're going to show you and give you examples of exactly how to correct this in children of all ages, from teenagers down to our first graders. Many times these are the kids that you think of as lazy or sloppy or unmotivated. They look that way. That's the way it appears, but they really have a writing glitch. So we're going to look at these children. These are the ones that sometimes we have them go to an OT for fine motor. Sometimes you can do this at home. Let's look at both ways. We call this class Smart Kids Who Hate to Write. These are kids who have dysgraphia often, or visual spatial problems. Sometimes a visual spatial problem only shows up in their movement, their sense of space and where they are. Other times it shows up real clearly in their writing. I'm going to show you exactly how to look for the things that I look for. For the last 12 years, I have had a practice called Child Diagnostics Incorporated in Denver, Colorado. It's a consultation practice, and I've seen families from all over the country, and I work with one family a day. And I help that family find out which one of the 4 learning gates is blocked for their child, or why a child has to work harder than we want them to have to work at in certain areas. Once we find that out, I show them how to correct it. We videotape it and they can go on their way and do the corrections at home. I'm going to show you today how you can be your own diagnostician in this one area and how to correct it. So this, I believe, will be something that will be very helpful for you. So we know that. Let's look at the brain and see what we know, because the #1 processing glitch that we have in children is the visual motor or the writing glitch, and we don't recognize it. It just looks like if they just tried a little harder that they could get it just right. Let's look at the model of the brain. We know that we have 2 parts to our brain, connected by a bundle of nerves called the corpus callosum. And of course, this is a simplistic version, but this is the way we can think about it. We know that anything that we do that's easy is easy because we make connections. Let me just get a color here that'll work better for you to see on the screen. Because we have connections between the 2 hemispheres. If it's hard because we actually shut a hemisphere off. Just like we shut an eye off when we're looking at things, we shut a hemisphere off easily when we're doing processes. So let's look at what we know about the brain. We know that the left brain is considered our thinking brain or our concentrating brain, and the right brain is considered our doing brain. This is what we mean by that. We mean that when we learn something new, like driving a car or riding a bike, when we learn something new, at first we concentrate on it. Then we know that what happens is a little bit after practicing that crosses this corpus callosum and goes into the automatic hemisphere. So now we can think and drive at the same time, and we can think and ride a bike at the same time. Well, God set it up so that all processes are like that. For example, just even the part of reading. If we were in Japan, we would read top down. If we were in Israel, we would read right to left. In our country, we read left to right, so our brain isn't wired for left to right. So what we do is that when they're little, we track with our fingers as we're reading to our kids. And their brain is saying, oh, I see, in this country, we read left to right. And then when they're little, they're first learning to read. For 6 months, we have them track a lot with their finger. They certainly can track as long as they want to with their finger, but generally the way the brain perceives it is after about 6 months of tracking with the finger, then that transfers over, that eye tracking transfers over this midline or corpus callosum, lands in this hemisphere. So now the child is able to think and to write at the same time, or excuse me, to think and to read at the same time, because his eyes can track easily from left to right. When we talk about visual processing problems, after a while we'll talk about children for whom that eye tracking didn't become automatic. So everything about learning a process is all about automaticity. Do we have to give energy to something that we don't want to have to give energy to? We don't want that child to have to give energy to it. For this video, we're going to look at writing. When a child, the writing gait in school, for school work, what we do is we use the writing gait a lot. We know, by the way, the left brain is where we store our short-term memory, and our right brain is where we store our long-term memory. So that doesn't mean that if your left brain, you only use your short-term memory, or right brainers only use their long-term memory. Now what happens the way we learn? We concentrate on something new. It goes from the short-term memory, crosses over that midline or corpus callosum, lands in the long-term memory. That's the way typical learning happens. For those of you who have your kids at home, that learning just happens so fast, and so you're just so sure that you're a great teacher. But in reality, they have no glitches, and learning does happen if we just kind of keep it before them and teach them. So what happens is one of the learning gates is the writing learning gate. So normally we have the child write, and when they write something, the act of writing gets information into the long-term memory.